Welcome back to 1v1 Album Battles and NFR Podcast, also known as Free Smoke. The way that this works is that we have different matchups of albums going head-to-head. I'm choosing a side for one album. Anta's going to be on the other side for the other album. We have 5 minutes to debate which album is better, and the matchups for today include Scaring the Hose by Danny Brown and JPEGMAFIA versus Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick. We have Heroes and Villains versus We Don't Trust You, and many more. And the way that works, like I said, 5 minutes of debate, and it ends there.
Yes, sir.
And what's interesting is that you guys get to decide who the winner is in the comments. Let us know who won every single matchup. And that's it, bro. Let's fucking get into this, man.
And by the way, before we actually get into this, let us know per each round, which album do you prefer and what is your reasoning for it? Because this is always a beautiful series, the start of conversation, and this is as barber talk as it possibly gets, you know?
Sir.
So let's get into this, all right? Let's start off with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers versus Scaring the Hose. You and I are very big fans of both of these albums in our own respect. I believe you had it at number 6 in 2022 on your top 10 albums of the year. Talking about Mr. Morale, obviously. I had it at number 2 as far as Scaring the Hose in my 2023 list. You had it at number 1. So we're not far off from each other.
Yep.
We both think that these are excellent projects, and we both think that they strive in different areas. And that's what I want to start off with, is the different areas, right? So could we get past the writing? I feel like the writing is much better on Mr. Morale when you go into the thematic basis of the album, the double album theme, the way that it's split up into acts, and the type of writing you're getting from Kendrick, on example, like A Father Time, United in Grief, even something like An Auntie Diaries, for example. So could we get past that number of points? Could we just say that Mr. Morale is a better written album than Scaring the Hose?
Well, I mean, they serve different purposes. I think ultimately when you're looking at the writing and like the themes of both albums, Mr. Morale is Kendrick rapping about like defeating generational curses and about him working on his own personal growth, whereas Scaring the Hose takes on a whole different purpose. So for me, it's almost hard to compare it because the idea of Scaring the Hose is to create freedom within the music and to be very anti-establishment and to even parody the hip-hop scene at large, like you'll get in a song like Scaring the Hose where they're talking about making fun of auto-tune and about how certain rappers are making music with the incentive of making money and not for the art form itself. So I don't want to say that Scaring the Hose doesn't have deep messaging. It's just, it's a very different approach compared to Mr. Morale.
Yes, but I feel like the writing is a lot more detailed on Mr. Morale. So example, talking about those generational curses, going into something like A Father Time, for example, talking about how a lot of men in their life are missing their fathers and what that does later on in your life. Even something like United in Grief, something that Kendrick has talked about in his music prior, but it was taken on in a new approach. And Mr. Morale was kind of diving deep into all the things that he experienced and kind of went deep into it. So you're right. I don't think that content-wise, Scaring the Hose is lacking in any sort of way. I don't believe in that. I just feel like when you look at it pound for pound, like writing-wise for writing-wise, it is a better written album. It's a lot more complex to digest. It's better organized in sequencing, and it's better on the thematic basis.
Let's talk about production. We had enough time about that. When it comes to production, Scaring the Hose definitely takes the lead, and I think that when you're looking at certain instrumentals on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, for example, something like A Crown, you just have some live piano chords and a subdued Kendrick performing over it. It's pretty bland and forgettable. Even looking at something like Auntie Diaries, it just has these low-key synths and some kick drums. I just feel like there were certain beats that were undercooked. And then when you look at Scaring the Hose, by comparison, it was so fucking innovative and brilliant what JPEG was able to do because he used one drum machine. He used the SP404, and with those limitations, he was still able to give you beats like Garbage Pail Kids, where he's sampling a 1985 Japanese commercial mixed in with these metal strings. Or you can even go for a song like Perfect that has these triumphant and epic horns, or maybe even something like a Kingdom Hearts Key, where you have this glitchy soul beat with an anime sample. Like, the production is so incredibly original that Mr. Morale can't even compete in that realm.
I completely disagree with you.
There's no fucking way.
No,
bro.
absolutely. I think that you made a big mistake by singling out 2 songs on the album that almost kind of serve as interludes to a certain extent.
As interludes? What are you talking about?
It's not necessarily as let me finish my
Garbage
point.
Pail Kids is an interlude to you.
Speak? I gave you your time to speak about the production.
But I'm not going to make you say bullshit either, though.
I'm talking about Mr. Morale. Like, you have selective hearing. I'm talking about the things that you decided to single out on Mr. Morale. Why don't you talk about the highlights of production? Why don't you talk about the sample flips? Example, again, something like A Father Time. Or how about those unique drums and synths on something like United in Grief? How about the Boy Wonder production on N95? Something that's so energetic and triumphant and that I've seen seen performed live in front of 60,000 people where entire crowds are going crazy. So to say that this production on this album does not pale in comparison, even the Pharrell production on
pales in comparison.
No way.
Get out of here,
Are you out of your fucking mind? Even the Pharrell production on
You're
Mr.
gonna
Morale.
tell me that Mr. Morale is a better produced album than Scaring the Hose?
No, but you're saying that it's a completely
okay, so admit it then.
it's not-
Scaring the Hose is better production.
I think they're on the same level.
I
think they're on the same level. Are you out of your fucking mind?
Okay, anyways, besides that, I think ultimately Mr. Morale has more flaws you can pick at in terms of performance as well. Looking at Kendrick's performance, there's no way you're going to defend, yeah, baby. Try to defend that, bro, please.
No way.
I'll give you the fucking floor to defend a performance like that.
Absolutely. So I'll go into the album performance, by the way, which you gave close to a perfect rating for Kendrick Lamar
Gave
on
an
this
amazing
album.
performance. Same rating I gave to Danny Brown and JPEG.
Absolutely. So therefore, stop trying to go for those little fucking nitpicks. It's a 19-song album, double album.
That's bloated. It's a bit bloated too.
Give me a performance better than United in Grief. Give me flows better than United in Grief.
It's a bit bloated too.
Give me a performance better than Father Time.
Listen to them on Perfect.
Give me something better than Savior.
Listen to them on Kingdom Hearts Key, bro.
But that's what I'm trying.
But the difference is from start to finish, they're lively, they're dynamic.
But you've gotten that
it's
from
a bunch
Danny
of
Brown
erratic flows, and I've gotten amazing Kendrick performances before.
Absolutely.
What the fuck does that have to do with anything?
But what I'm trying to tell you is that you're trying to sell it to me as if it's this revolutionary thing that I've already gotten before, and I gave it an amazing rating. I think they're amazing performances. But don't try to fucking go after a Rich Spirit and tell me, oh, there's a pick there. Oh, there's a pick there. Go through that fucking album. It's some of the best performances of that year.
There are songs that did not need to be on that album. You're telling me that it's a perfect track list. There's no skips.
No, absolutely not.
This is a skipless album to you.
When did we have we didn't have the skipless conversation. We never had the skipless conversation. We're not going there. I never mentioned that. I'm talking about the artist performance. But why would? So you're gonna tell me that Scaring the Hose is a perfect?
We're almost a minute over there, but
fire. Okay.
Listen, guys, you guys let us know in the comments, Mr. Morale or Scaring the Hose, what takes it. But the next matchup, this is going to be very interesting just because we've used one of these albums in a prior Free Smoke.
Yes, we have.
We had done Heroes and Villains by Metro Boomin against Not All Heroes Wear Capes by Metro Boomin. This time we're doing Heroes and Villains versus We Don't Trust You by Future and Metro. And let's start the time right now.
So let me ask you a question, all right? Because I feel like you should have probably taken Not All Heroes Wear Capes in this sort of situation, because if we're going to NFR review standards and maybe you switched your mind overnight, I don't know these things. Maybe you woke up this morning and you had scrambled eggs and you said, oh, well, I think it's a better rating. I asked you twice about the rating on Heroes and Villains. You gave it a great on the review that we did back in 2022. And then when I asked you again this year, you said, no, I'd keep it as a great. We both unanimously agreed that this was an amazing album and bumped it over a tier.
In March. In March. Am I not allowed to change opinions? I've changed opinions on albums all the time.
Okay, hold on. So what happened in the span of 2 months that would make you say this is no longer an amazing album? I would bump this down to great. What do you think happened in these 2 months that would make you say that?
Brother, music evolves over time. The same way that we felt like we should have given Symbian a perfect rating over time. So I don't want to dwell on that.
So just for the record, would you bump it down?
I would bump it down. And the more that I listen to it, there's definitely quite a few performances from Future on songs like Claustrophobic and Magic Don Juan where he's super autopilot. He's giving you recycled flows that he's given you time and time again. But I don't want to focus on that because these are both Metro Boomin projects, and I feel like when you have a producer at the helm, you do want to look at the curation ability as well as the production itself. And when I'm looking album per album, I do want to talk about when it comes to Metro Boomin and what he did in terms of album sequencing. He did a much better job on Heroes and Villains, even though he did a much better job on Not All Heroes Wear Capes. The way that you hear On Time transitioning into Superhero is perfect. Or even hearing the thunder noises on Too Many Nights right before going into Raindrops and having that thunderous rainfall atmosphere. It's genius. Not only that, I feel like Heroes and Villains does a much better job of sticking to a theme. Oof. When you're looking at the theme of having Homelander being sampled, when you're looking at the Jay-Z sample from So Appalled, when you're looking at lyrics like I'm tweaking, I'm geeking, I can't save no ho, he really played into that world of the superheroes, even looking at the presentation of the album.
I've been talking for 40 seconds. Let me jump in here. First of all, the whole thing about the sequencing, that was arguably your biggest regret with this album when looking at it from the transition and Not All Heroes Wear Capes into this one. So I don't think that you could bring that as an argument into here. Not only that, but looking at this album, this may be a personal preference, but I always feel like albums are a lot more concise and well executed when you're able to have one artist and one producer attack it. What was so good about this album is that you had arguably some of Metro Boomin's best ever collaborators in Future come into this album and guide the entire experience. Not only that, what this album means to hip-hop now in hip-hop history is fucking massive. You and I spoke about this on the podcast. We felt like the competitive nature in hip-hop was no longer a thing since 2018. What does this album do come in and do in 2024? It completely revives the competitive nature.
Well, Kendrick does. Let's not say the album does. Kendrick
Of course
does.
it is. Go on to songs like We Don't Trust You. What does that do there? Go on to songs like Everyday Struggle.
What does that do for the competitive nature?
Because like you were talking about how the album with Heroes and Villains was playing into the superhero theme, whatever the case may be, I agree with you. But that competitive nature and that competitive spirit was prominent within the entire track list. Even going to look at, let's say, lyrics on Young Metro, even going on to, let's say, Future.
What does Cinderella have to do with competitive nature?
What does
Creepin'
have to do with superheroes? Talk to me. That's what I'm trying to make you understand is that your arguments are...
No, I never said every single song. You said every single song and We Don't Trust You. No, don't go back on your word. You said every single song and We Don't Trust
I'm sorry.
You. Thank you.
I'm sorry. My bad. But even going back to songs like, let's say, GTA or What the Fuck You Mean, Slimed In, you're getting a prime 2015 Future in the cut. You and I have both agreed that this is arguably a top 4 Future project and one of the most stacked trap catalogs that Atlanta has ever seen. So in my opinion, that's why I give it the edge over
You've
it.
been talking for 2 minutes, by the way.
Oh,
2 minutes straight you've been talking.
You should have interrupted me.
Well, yeah, I'm going to interrupt you right now. I think that when you look at track list consistency as well, there are way more mediocre or skips on We Don't Trust You. When you're looking at Fried Chia Vibe, when you're looking at Claustrophobic, when you're looking at Ain't No Love, you're getting performances from Future and beats from Metro that are a bit passé, whereas on Heroes and Villains, the only song you can really pinpoint and be like, this is not it,
Creepin' and Lock
is
on Me.
Lock on Me. That's it. Creepin's a bad song to you.
Oh, I didn't enjoy it. We've called it a skip so many different times on the podcast.
No,
are you riding in the rinky dink with 21 Savage?
Well, the 21 Savage feature isn't great. For sure, I agree with the 21 Savage feature, but Weeknd did a great job on that fucking song.
You're
did he not?
With him? So Lou has selective arguments whenever he has to get into... No. Come on.
And also, when you want to talk about...
Be honest with me with the creeping thing.
I admit that I don't like 21 Savage in the song. I like The Weeknd on it, though. But ultimately, you also admitted the impact that Heroes and Villains had for reviving the trap game and how important that was.
It was super
When it comes to We Don't Trust You, I feel like, although it might be viewed as a classic over time, it's for only 2 reasons. Because of Like That and what it did for hip-hop, and also because it marks the first collaboration between Future and Metro, and because you have so many bangers on it.
Yes, one of the most go-to duos. One of the most go-to duos in trap history came together for a collaboration album. You can't be mad at that. The direction is automatically going to be a bit more focused when you have that type of thing going on. So listen, I think it's a fair conversation. You made great points. I made great points. Guys, let us know. Heroes and Villains or We Don't Trust You down in the comment section.
There we go. The next matchup that we have, this is a good one. The Forever Story by Jid versus Melt My Eyez, See Your Future by Denzel Curry. And this is a cool matchup just because my album of the year for 2022 was The Forever Story, and your album of the year for 2022 was Melt My Eyez, See Your Future.
In another universe, I feel like this might be switched because your favorite artist is Denzel and one of my favorite rappers is JID. So it's kind of like interesting the way that played out. What was also interesting is that my number 2 was The Forever Story. Your number 2 was Melt My Eyez, See Your Future. So you're going to bring up the consistency of the track list, right? I understand where you're going with that. I think it's a fair argument to be made. I just think that I could kind of overlook that in that situation and understand my reasoning, okay? I take you, tracks 1 to 6. That is one of the greatest track runs that I have seen in the 2020s decade for a rap album. Going from Melt Session number 1, Walkin', Worst Comes to Worst, John Wayne, The Last, and then after that, Having Mental. Now, I also feel like the sequencing is a bit better on Melt My Eyez, See Your Future. I'll give you guys an example. I feel like Melt My Eyez, See Your Future has a better intro and outro on the album. Now, Galaxy might be regarded as a skit to open up the album. So going on to the next best thing, which I believe is Radar, I still feel like Melt Session number 1 is a better track. And then after that, ending off with the Heels is fantastic. Also, with the Forever Story, the approach is beautiful. JID had reached this new fandom. He had reached a completely new height in his rap career. He was bringing you in home experience stories like Crack Sandwich. He was bringing you in heartfelt stories about family like on System M. There was just so much going on with the project. I just feel like when you look at songs like A Money or even A Stars, there's a bit of sway, let's say, within the album as far as writing goes. I feel like when you go through Melt My Eyez, See Your Future and you see what Denzel Curry was able to do with that track list, especially with writing-wise, going into his mental health, going into his journey, and being able to go through these motions.
I'm gonna butt in here because it's been almost 2 minutes. I think from a conceptual standpoint, you could argue that they're on equal playing grounds in terms of what they brought. Like, they both stick to their thematic basis. I think that it was cool to see Jid expand upon the origin story he started on the Never story. I think that the biggest difference for me here, even production, they're on similar playing field. I love the jazz and soul compositions, Robert Glasper's contributions, but I think Jid's production overall has all of those amazing sample flips and all of that jazziness, but just with a bit more panache when you're going into something like Stars and you have the psychedelic flute and just that hypnotic feeling. Not only that, but all of the beat switches made it so much more thrilling of an experience when you're looking at production. Apart from that, though, my main argument is that when you're looking at performance for performance, Jid is way more versatile, and I feel like they both experiment when it comes to their performance on this album, but Jid's execution is much better. When you want to look at how much Jid improved as a singer from the Never story to this album, it is unfathomable to hear the pipes that he has on a song like Cody Blue 31.
I completely agree.
And even what he did hook-wise on something like Brudanem. I think that when you're looking at Denzel, on the other hand, his experiments didn't pan out the way that I wanted them to, in the sense that they didn't feel as authentic to him. For example, X-Wing, I love the song, but I just feel like he used some Baby Keem-esque flows, and I feel like the auto-tune, again, didn't feel like Denzel. It wasn't that authentic. Also, looking at a song like Troubles, I don't feel like Denzel attempted the melodic cadence as well as he could have. So I feel like when it came to Jid, he had the range, he had the singing, he had the rapping. In terms of, you want to talk about bars and wordplay, I'm a bear it all when I talk to God. You know I'm a rant when I talk to Jah. How are you going to find that level of wordplay on the album? So I feel like from a rapping performance, Jid excelled way more. And I think also when you're looking at the writing of the album, I think that Jid, I haven't even reached the 2-minute mark that you did. Jid went deeper with the writing because they were both supposed to be personal albums. But Jid, on something like a Crack Sandwich, he's naming his family members. I feel like Denzel had his guard up a bit more and didn't let the door open as much.
Oh my goodness. Going into Melt Session number 1, talking about how he did his people wrong in his life and how now he's dealing with karma on his soul. Going through Walking and talking about how he's on this spiritual journey throughout life trying to find and redeem his soul. Even talking about the production arguments that you were making with the beat switches. You want to talk to me about the Robert Glasper production on Melt Session number 1? That's arguably one of the best beats of that year. Not only that, but I do feel like there's higher highs on the album. I mean, looking at our top 10 list, right? Because I want to reference older material just so we could kind of just stay on level ground at this point. Maybe opinions change. Your highest of that year was System M. It didn't crack your top 5. You had 2 songs off of this album
System M was number 4, by the way.
Within your top, regardless. You still had Walk In and you still had Melt Session number 1 over it. When I
did not have Melt Session number 1 over it. I did not.
Where did you place
I had Walk In over it.
That was your song of the year. Where did you place Melt Session number 1?
I don't think it cracked the top 10 list. It might have, but it wasn't top 5. I had System
Anyone
M.
that's in the comments that have viewed it, just correct me if you guys can. Regardless, though, even looking at the experimentation, like on something like an X-Wing, or even on something like a Zaytoki, for example, where he's experimenting with these new, quick, fast-paced flows, I feel like, personally, Denzel Curry's mic presence was better executed on this front, on the rapping parts. For example, looking at that second part of Walking, even looking at something like a John Wayne, where he has like these slurred-out deliveries, and it feels very oozy and woozy. Like, those are the types of cinematic performances that I go to Denzel for, and I feel like they were better executed upon on that front. I think we reached the limit.
We did reach the limit, 5 minutes and a half. Great debate. That was a good one. Guys, let us know. I knew it was going to be a good one just because we both value those albums so much. But the next one's exciting just because this one was a matchup that we had thrown around the conversation for a very long time. We were always sort of like, okay, do we want to do this? Which side would we be on? Just because, again, these are both iconic albums for the 2010s. This is going to be Luv Is Rage 2 by Lil Uzi Vert, which I'll be defending, and Ant is going to be taking on Die Lit by Playboi Carti.
So are we throwing the rapping and the writing stuff out the window for this? Or are you bringing this in? Do you want to be that guy and bringing it into an Uzi album?
I could do it because you don't have a single song like Dark Queen on Die Lit that you have writing about a dedication to a mother and everything she was able to do to raise Uzi and make him the man that he is. So that is one point that I do want to make. But I want to first go to something you had just said about Melt My Eyes and the Forever Story when you were talking about high-ranking songs. I want to bring that here since you brought that up. Mm-hmm. You have to admit that there is not a single song that can compete with Exotor Life on Die Lit.
Not a single one. Only problem is that these are like 19 to 20 songs.
Well, you also have, I think the highs are way higher on Luv Is Rage 2 when you're looking at 20 Mins, when you're looking at Exo Tour Life, when you're looking at No Sleep Leak, when you're looking at For Real.
Do you want me to go through the highs of this album, Lou?
You could, bro. And you could also go through the lows.
Yeah,
let's go through the lows.
I could go through the lows of Luv Is Rage too. Absolutely, I think both of these albums have certain songs that I would bring to the cutting board.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that
For sure.
So I want to bring that out of the
But
conversation.
the highs are higher on Love Is Rage too.
Because of one song. You want me to go through the
20 Mins and Exo Tour Life are better than any songs on that album.
No,
One of the best songs is Cause of Uzi. Look at Shooter. Look at Shooter. One of the best songs in the album.
It's not the best song
And
on the album.
you're getting Love Is Rage 2 type of
First
Uzi.
of all, long time intro is a much better intro than what we have on Luv Is Rage 2. R.I.P. Love Hurts. Shooter. Right Now. You have
Brother, I could read Tracklist too.
Flatbed Freestyle.
I could read Tracklist
no,
too, bro.
I want you to understand. I want you to understand what's going on in this track. Chopper Won't Miss. R.I.P. Fredo. Top, like we're talking about some prime Playboi Carti songs. Not only that, but listen, I'm not going. I agree. I think I don't want to disrespect this song. I think what Uzi did with the personal writing on Luv Is Rage 2 was really cool. It's awesome. I'm just not going to Uzi for that. I know you aren't. I know I'm not. We're going to these albums for fucking bangers. If I were to put this and I were to challenge you to a hit battle right now with these songs, tracklist for tracklist, we know where it would go. I already did it before. I know where I would go. I would be going with Dial-It. Do you want to do the track battle right now?
I want to keep arguing. I don't want to waste time on a track battle.
Want to do the track?
We'll do it at the end. We'll do it at the end. For now, I want to make my arguments because we're talking about bangers, songs. I want to talk about how Uzi has a more dynamic performance than Playboi Carti on this album. I'll give you an example. If you want a song that has hyper ad-lib based energetic performance, you get that with a song like For Real. But if you want a performance where you're getting auto-crooning and a blend of rapping as well, you can get that on something like Dark Queen. If you want a song where Uzi can blend in with the production itself, you have that with Early 20 Ragers. So Uzi is able to do everything that Carti can and more. And I think that's what makes his performance way more dynamic, is that he can evoke emotion way better than Playboi Carti can. And I think thematically, Uzi playing into like the heartbreak themes on so many songs on here also adds points for me, because at least we know the album is based on something, whereas like Dial-It, as much as I love it and there's full of bangers, it's sort of him just like, you know, partying and being wild, and like it's kind of all over the place.
Yes, but it's so dynamic. It's such a beautiful track list to listen to when you're going into like Playboi Carti's performances. Example, like to say that Carti was not as animated as Uzi, I think is a completely false statement. Looking at example, you want something that attacks a bit more of like a melodic sort of standpoint, that's something that's a bit more like subdued. You go onto something like a Love Hurts, for example. You want something that's a lot more high voltage. You go onto something like, let's say, an R.A.P. or something like a Shooter, for example. So I think they both strive in there. What I'm trying to say with Dial-It is that I had a hard time with Dial-It, like going into it, just because the first time I'm like, bro, I've never heard this before. It felt like an upgrade off of Self-Titled and brought a new sound to a completely different height. This is the pinnacle of Playboi Carti for me, and you understand how important this album is within his discography. With Uzi, I'm looking at Luv Is Rage 2 and I'm like, okay, this is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's arguably the best album within his discography, but The Perfect Love Tape, you go to Lil Uzi Vert versus The World, I feel like there's similar song structures within those albums that were not necessarily copy-pasted, but it was a building block. I do feel like Dial-It strive because of how unique it was for that 2018
Let's
trap
not talk
landscape.
about impact, because when you look at how important Love Is Rage 2 is, being the first mainstream emo rap album, that is massive. When you want to look at diversity of track lists, when you want to look at the balance of sad boy anthems and high-octane bangers on Love Is Rage 2, it's the full package. Also, another point I want to make is that when you're looking at the curation ability from Carti, well, I think it was well calculated for the most part. You do still have quite a few weak features. When you want to look at Nicki Minaj and Poke It Out, or you want to look at Red Cold Hearted on Middle of the Summer, she has the singing abilities of a girl from a middle school talent show. Like pure amateur singing on that track.
Do you want to go
also,
into the memorable
Chief Keef
features?
On Mileage, not the strongest.
No way.
Not the strongest.
Don't be picking on Chief Keef. That's a fantastic feature. Looking at Young Nudie on Rest in Peace Fredo, looking at Chopper Won't Miss with Young Thug, looking at No Time with Gunna, even looking at Travis Scott with Love Hurts. That was another thing that I was going to say. I feel like Love Is Rage 2, maybe needed a bit more features. There needed to be a bit more meat to
It
the
was
feature.
perfect. You had Pharrell in the weekend. What more do you need?
But bro, like it's 15
He
songs
carried
plus.
it on himself. It's even more points for
No,
Uzi.
it doesn't.
Yeah, you're proving
because,
my point.
we've said this before, though. Uzi has a hard time carrying studio albums.
All of
And
Uzi's best songs are him alone.
Yes.
Think about it. All of them.
I agree with you. I would have liked to see a bit more features on here. I would have loved to see that Carti moment maybe again within that track list. I would have loved to see more collaborators on it. So I feel like also points that I'm going to give for Dilit is that feature list. There's iconic features within this track list, and I do feel like it makes the album a bit more entertaining. But guys, let us know in the comments section, Dilit or Luv Is Rage 2. Let me know which album you prefer. But let's go into the last matchup for today. This one's going to be very important. This one's going to be interesting. This one is going to be interesting. And watch your fucking tongue on this one, bro. No slander on this album. I don't do slander on your album. The Slim Shady LP versus Reasonable Doubt.
I don't try to do slander. I try to just prove points as to why A is better than B.
Yeah, but sometimes you
That's what it
downplay
is.
albums.
Well, I have to look at flaws, bro. At the end of the day, like we're critiquing
I
albums,
agree.
man. Like
But-
it's what it is,
but
man.
there's not, maybe there's certain, like Reasonable Doubt, in my opinion, is arguably a 10 on 10. Same thing for the Slim Shady LP. I'm not going to attack those flaws because there's barely any flaws to fucking argue. I'm just going to say what the artist did better in context to a 1v1 matchup. So let's both fucking agree on
both
that. bro.
classics, both classic
Okay.
albums. Absolutely, bro.
Writing styles are two completely different things.
And I think one album. Anyways, finish your thought.
So
I'll let you make your first point.
when I look at Reasonable Doubt, I love the writing on it. Whether it's, let's say, The Evils, let's say whether it's Dead Presidents 2, you know, the iconic duo that was Jay-Z and Biggie, and I wish we got more material from them both if Biggie would have, you know, been able to see a prosperous career, whatever the case may be with Brooklyn's Finest. I just feel like, from my standpoint, the Slim Shady LP's material is a lot more engaging. That's just for me. I feel like if you want Reasonable Doubt type-esque writing, I could find it from New York albums done in a better way. For example, going into something like It Was Written from that same year. I could argue that the writing's better on that album. They kind of share the same level. Even looking at something like a Nomadic, looking at earlier Mobb Deep material, looking at even Nomadic, for example, I feel like when you look at the Slim Shady LP, nothing was going to be able to replicate that album, especially with the birth of the Slim Shady alter ego. Not only that, when you go into the storytelling cuts, like A Guilty Conscience, for example, or even something as The World Turns, that is a completely different type of pen that raised Eminem into one of the greatest lyricists of all time conversation. So how do you defend it from a writing standpoint? Because we're talking about 90s classics.
I
here.
defend it all the way.
There's a lot to be discussed here.
I don't think the cartoonish rap from Eminem on the Slim Shady LP serves the same utility as Hov's rhymes about, you know, street life and ghetto life as a hustler. Like, I'm not trying to every day listen to Eminem rap about like blowing his brains out or smoking crack all the time. When I'm listening to Hov and I'm listening to songs like Politics as Usual, I'm hearing about a hustler who is looking at the pleasure but also the pain of that street life. Or if you want to go to a song like Can I Live, he's rapping about how like so many people in the Marcy projects and from where he grew up have had to go into hustling out of necessity, out of survival, and then sort of fell into a stage where they became addicted to the lifestyle. And I feel like that's why Reasonable Doubt is better as a written album, is that it's more authentic. It's more about reality. It's more grounded in reality. It's more relatable for people that have lived those types of lives, where it's like Eminem's A Slim Shady LP is such a fun album to listen to because it's so graphic and it's fun and it's berserk. But ultimately, one album is more grounded in reality and I feel like connects to people that have actually lived through these experiences. And if you want to talk about storytelling, we can't act like Reasonable Doubt doesn't have songs like Coming of Age, where you have this genius song concept where Jay-Z is in the streets of Marcy and he learns about Memphis Bleak, who's sort of like selling at the corner, and how they sort of get into business together, and he's sort of the master bringing in the protege. I think that also when you're looking at all-time great hip-hop songs, Reasonable Doubt has more in the Slim Shady LP. You want to talk about The Evils, you want to talk about Dead Presidents 2, you want to talk about Politics as Usual, you want to talk about so many Brooklyn's Finest with Biggie. Are you for real? If we were to look,
you want me to do it?
If we were to look at the all-time list of our favorite songs of all time, you would have more Reasonable Doubt tracks.
I have them
than the
here.
Slim Shady
I have
LP.
My Name Is. I have Guilty Conscious. I have Role Model on here. I have, let me keep going. I have Bad Meets Evil. I have I'm Shady, As the World Turns. And so basically your whole argument about the writing is just like what you prefer as a hip hop listener. You were just saying that you could relate more
then
to
what makes
Reasonable
Slim
Doubt.
Shady LP better?
I feel
as
like
a
it's a
written
lot more
album?
descriptive. I feel like when you start going into the descriptive writing and the imagery of the album, which is literary device and English grammar, I feel like it was a lot more
Thank you,
developed.
Professor Anthony.
Well, I just wanted to give it to you guys because Lou was just basically saying what he feels like he could relate to more. I want to give you guys facts.
No, I never said.
When
I
you-
never said I could relate to it more.
Well-
I said people could relate to it, and I said that it's something that's grounded in reality and is more authentic to
So-
Jay-Z's life.
Okay, so example, like going through like a Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino, that's not grounded in reality, but is that not one of the best written films that you've ever watched?
There are moments and there are like stories that could be attributed. It's a crime movie. What do you mean it's not grounded in reality? Of course,
that
those
movie
scenarios
is
are.
completely turned.
Well, yeah,
whack.
it's called fiction or not, bro. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But
That's what
I'm just
trying to
saying, in
make you-
terms
that's
of
what I'm-
in
I'm
terms
trying to
of
give it the ideology.
utility and what serves someone a bit more.
No.
Jay-Z is talking about shit
Yeah,
that will
but,
serve someone a bit more than the Slim Shady LP.
You know
where
how
it's
many
like,
you know how many people have learned and have grown because of Eminem's music and the creativity and the escape that it's given? It's some of the best creative writing that the hip hop genre has ever seen. It's one of the most unique hip hop albums for the 90s landscape. It birthed the best alter ego and the best fictional character you've ever seen within music.
I'm not denying that.
But that's what I'm trying to say though, is that don't downplay that and be like, oh well, Reasonable Doubt's better because it's more grounded in reality. What the fuck does
No,
that even mean?
I think the timeless subject matter will live on more because, again, this will be... there's timeless themes within it, bro. Someone hustling in the streets, that is a timeless theme
course it is.
that so many people could relate to for decades and decades and for eternity.
And the Slim Shady
really.
LP is just as timeless. You have artists now that are still using Slim Shady
Come
LP
on,
material.
everybody, get down today. There's also weak hooks in that album. Come on, everybody, and the lullaby that he sings on As the World Turns. Those are two
By
weak
the way,
hooks.
if you went into the
Bro.
research As the World Turns, that was an interpolation, and that plays into the theme of the song of using reality TV
Doesn't
shows
make it sound
to
good.
be able. Absolutely, it sounds good. We've bumped this song together, and we've both argued that it's maybe one of the strongest writing-wise on the album. Not only that, when you get into the production of the album, I guess it goes down to what you prefer. I've always preferred Bass Brothers, Eminem, and Dr. Dre production over New York Boom Bap. That's my cup of tea. I feel like I don't want to knock Reasonable Doubt's
you can't knock the production from DJ Clark
but-
Kent.
But
You can't do that.
we're not going to knock the executive production
never
and curation
did.
from Dr. Dre.
You didn't get a word out of me about
So-
production.
So are we having the production conversation?
We could have it. To me, again, it's like you said, it's different stylistic choices. So
Okay, beautiful.
ultimately,
So
I'm cool on that.
So ultimately, this battle comes down to the writing.
It comes down to the writing. It comes down to the bar work.
It even comes down to the diversity of the
When
performances
it comes to
as well.
Cheese Yard, like Three Blind Mice, like there are so many quotables as well on Reasonable Doubt, man. But that's gonna be it for the time. Over 6 minutes on that one actually. But guys, listen, that's free smoke. Who do you think cooked? Who do you think won each and every single matchup?
Yes, sir.
Let us know down in the comments. This was probably like the most civil fucking free smoke we've ever had.
Because like I feel like in the past, maybe sometimes we haven't been as objective and it's a fucking screaming match. Whereas if this like, you know, I wanted to take my time with this. You know,
Yeah.
there's like good points to be made with each of these albums, and I do feel like certain matchups drive in others, but I do feel like at the end of the day, I did have strong arguments. So guys, like Lou said, let us know in the comment section who won, who lost. What matchups should we bring in the future? If you guys have watched the podcast, you know our taste in music, so maybe you guys will pick up on a matchup that we didn't think of. Thank you guys so much for watching this edition of Free Smoke, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.